Good morning to all of you in the room, and good evening to three of our friends in India. Welcome to all of you. I think most of you were with us yesterday, but there are a couple of new people, so I just want you to know that we are delighted that everyone is here. My name is Ashok Gurung. I'm the director of India-China Institute, and it's really a great privilege to have everyone here for this rather special initiative that we have within the Institute. And the idea of this Institute, what we are calling India-China Conversation, Interdisciplinary Symposium, is really to provide a platform, a space for young scholars to share their work with a larger group of people. Especially, I think, if you are working on India-China issues based in India, or if you are based in China, or if you are based here, it is very difficult. I think it's almost rare that you will have people from all three locations in the same room. And it's even more difficult to arrange for people who are, established scholars to come to the same room and actually take time and to comment on what the young scholars are doing. And what we have today is that we have some of the most respected scholars who have studied India-China issues for many, many years. They are not only present in this room, but many of them actually took time to read the papers written by our young scholars, and we have a very unique and very privileged situation where, unlike most other symposiums, most other conferences where young scholars have to present their work and defend their work, we are going to use a slightly different format where a young scholar has the opportunity to first listen to what their paper, if someone else were to read their paper, how the paper reads to them, and the senior scholar will summarize their paper in 5 minutes, which is not an easy task for academics to do, but because these are really highly experienced scholars, I'm sure they will take 5 minutes to synthesize and convey what the paper is about. And then we have asked them to take 3 minutes to make their own analysis and provide critical and hopefully encouraging feedback so that the young scholar has the opportunity to revise their paper one more time. And basically what's going to happen is we have 2 sessions this morning. One led by my colleague, good friend, Nimmi Kurian this morning. Nimmi? Nimmi is the one who's going to moderate the session where 4 papers will be presented. Nimmi is the ICI representative in India. She was also ICI fellow in the second cohort that looked at into the issue of prosperity and inequality. She herself is a well-known and respected scholar who works on India-China issues, has been working there for quite some time. So I think before we proceed and before I ask Nimmi to take over the proceedings, I just want to give a very brief background about this initiative. Basically, after working with a group of India-China Institute fellows for the past 6 years, these are senior scholars, people who are really associate professor level colleagues, and some of them leaders in government positions or in NGO sector. What we learned, we meaning the India-China Institute, what we learned was basically, while it's wonderful to learn and exchange ideas with established scholars, there is really a serious issue of engaging younger generation of scholars in this conversation. And as some of you have pointed out in our closed-door session yesterday, some of the problems are more structural problems. Some has to do with financing of such initiatives. Some of it has to do with the programs in these two places are relatively new, and some of it has to do with recent history between India and China. Nonetheless, what we felt was that the participation of younger generation of scholars was in most of our conversations, even when they were held in India, China, and at the new school, were rather limited. So we began to inquire what was the reason. And it was clear to us, A, the programs that really focus on India-China story are very few in both the countries, including the US. While these young scholars working on India-China Institute once in a while will have time with their advisors or people in their department, but very rarely do they get chance to really share their work in a formal seminar-type setting. So that's when the idea of what if we were to work with a group of institutions in India and China to provide space for young scholars, what would happen? So that's how the conversation started about 2 years ago. And in India, with the help of our partner organization, Center for Policy Research, where Nimmi is based, and then colleagues at Delhi University, Professor Madhu Balla, who is here today, and colleagues from Jawaharlal Nehru University, we all got together, and everyone were very enthusiastic about trying out providing a forum for young scholars. So that's how it began. And in India, we organized a symposium in October, right?
October 31st.
Yeah, October 31st. We had done call for papers, and we invited about 10 young scholars to present their work. And out of 10 scholars, 3 of them were offered the opportunity to come and join us today. And unfortunately, none of them are here. And that's a long story. You can get into the story. Yeah, it's a very complicated story. And you can see Anil and Elmie, they are there. And right now we can say it has to do with US visa, is the primary reason. And another candidate simply could not come for other reasons. Similarly, in China, we partnered with Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Wei Zhang, where is Wei Zhang? Yes. Thanks to Wei Zhang, his institute is the one that worked very closely with my colleague Jianin Jha. Jianin Jha, I think those of you know there. Jianin is the ICI representative in China. So Jianin and Wei Zhang, with help from Professor Dong Shikui and several others in China, they also did a very similar exercise of putting out call for papers. And in China, just to give you a sense, I think there was a real apprehension whether we can even find enough people, enough Chinese students who are looking at India-China story. That was one big question we had. And then the second bigger issue that my colleagues warned me of is that even if there are young scholars who are looking into the India-China story, whether they have enough English to really participate in this international collaboration. And we were not so sure. We said, let's try. Let's put out the word, and we'll see what happens. And in a very the surprising result was, in fact, we got very good pool of applicants within a short period of time. I think we got about 17 applications, right? 20 applications. We invited, the final number was 10 people to present their work at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in February of this year. And out of that group, we invited 3 scholars, and they are here today. And you will meet with them, and their work will be discussed. And then from the new school, basically, I think we just chose 3 people who have studied at the new school. They have been part of the India-China Institute's work, and you will be hearing from them as well. The new school colleagues will appreciate this. If you, some of you who have been here for some time, you will recall thinking about India-China together at the new school at the time of establishment of ICI, India-China Institute, was really non-existent. Thanks to Lily and thanks to several other colleagues at the new school, that now we not only teach a course, graduate level course on India-China interactions, we in fact have an undergraduate level course on India-China that I was told by my colleague Sanjay who should be here soon, that over 60 students took that class. So overall, I think the purpose, as I said in the beginning, of this particular initiative is to provide emerging scholars a space to share their work, to get good feedback, and in the process, hopefully build a new community of young scholars who have also access to established scholars. So it is with this particular purpose that we are delighted that today we can have this opportunity. So the format, as I said in the beginning, is really that we have asked 1 senior fellow, or no, the 2 senior scholars to read each of the papers. They will take 5 minutes to summarize or to highlight the main points of the paper, 3 minutes to offer their feedback, and then the author will have about 5 to 7 minutes to respond. And then we will open up the floor for Q&A, including comments from the audience here. And here I just want to emphasize that since many of you in the audience really know some of these issues quite well, that we want you to ask hard questions, critical questions, but do it with a view towards that really we hope whatever you say will help them to not only improve their paper, but really continue, have the young scholars continue to pursue their scholarship in this particular area. So I would really appreciate that audience will also take time to comment on whatever they have to say on the papers. On that note, I'll ask Nimmi now to really. Yes, because they can't hear you otherwise, And each of the discussants should also come to the podium here. Thank you. Good morning.
Let me join Ashok in welcoming all of you to the inaugural symposium on emerging scholars. Let me also welcome our 2 Indian presenters who are joining us over Skype. A very quick, just to add to some of Ashok's inaugural comments on some of the thinking that went behind, starting this initiative. It's when Ashok Jianing and I started thinking about this, as he said, a couple of years ago, we had really set ourselves 3 key modest objectives. The first, as Ashok said, was to really offer a platform for young scholars and to present their ongoing work and to engage with a larger community of scholars. And we are also hoping that it'll turn out to be an opportunity for them, not just a 3-way conversation between scholars from the new school from India and China, but to also engage at the same time with established senior scholars. So, and with the difference being the conversation would be largely centered on the young scholars and helping them drive the process. So to that extent, I think we have gone some distance in getting that going. And a second couple of other key thoughts or objectives we had was to, at least I'll talk about a bit about the India part, and Jianing can fill in on the China part. A second objective that we felt looking at China studies in India is to try and get a set of institutional conversations going, at least connect China studies programs within Delhi to begin with, and for a variety of reasons, these conversations were clearly not taking off. They were taking off in an episodic sort of way, but there was very little, it wasn't institutionalized, so to speak. So we thought that there could be a clear value add in trying to get some of these, connect some of these key actors and bring them along to join the conversation. A third was to try and really decenter the conversation, to try and, at least especially in India, to take the China Studies program beyond Delhi, because there's beyond the fixation, or a whole lot of that gets, remains limited to Delhi. So we really thought that there was also a clear value add in trying to connect the dots and bring some of the conversations that's happening outside, which is very clearly happening outside Delhi, but we thought we could just connect the dots and play a useful role here. Just to take a couple of minutes to acknowledge the support that we got from the partners that really made this possible. And we worked very closely with Professor Madhu Bhalla from Delhi University, whom you all met yesterday. And from JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, we had Dr. Alka Acharya, who is Associate Professor at the Center for East Asian Studies. And she unfortunately could not join us because she's taken over a new position as Director of the Institute of Chinese Studies. And here I'd like to also warmly acknowledge the support I've got from my colleague Manka Bajaj at the Center for Policy Research, who's worked very, very hard with me along every step of the way. And also, last but not the least, a warm, grateful thanks to all our distinguished panelists who have agreed to read through these papers and offer us valuable insights. So let's get started. Quickly on the first paper, the first paper is by Elmie Rengma. Her paper is titled "The Soft Power Game: A Study of China, India, and SAARC Tripartite." Elmie, and I'll just give a single line sort of bios just to introduce the panelists really, because you have a more detailed bio in the brochure that's with you. So kindly refer to that if you need further details. So in the interest of time, I'll quickly just briefly introduce them. Elmie has a MA in International Relations from JNU and an MSc degree in International Politics from SOAS. Our two discussants for her paper are Professor Liu Jian, who is a professor at the Institute of Asia-Pacific Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Professor Mahendra Lama, founding Vice-Chancellor of the Central University of Sikkim, and also an ICI Fellow. So may I now invite Professor Liu, would you like to?
Thank you, Elmie. I'm on your behalf first to give the essence of your paper to our audience. My opinion will be voiced later. So the paper is entitled "Soft Power Game: A Study of China, India, and South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, Tripartite." And I think this is a well-written paper. And the first part of the paper is given the introduction for the background for writing this paper. That is, in the 21st century, the incredible rise of China is altering the landscape of the world, both politically and economically. Since China opened to the world under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, economic growth it has achieved is staggering. China has become the second largest economy economic miracle has transformed China from an agricultural society to a highly industrial one. If the 20th century belonged to the USA, many policymakers across the world predict that the 21st century will be a Chinese century. And therefore, that for many, China's rise represents so China is also in a position to be one of and the only serious, some other opinions, some different opinions about the Chinese century. The rapid growth of China's economy in turn has catapulted China to a position where it has become one of the great powers in international politics. Further, China is also in position to be the one and only serious challenger to the post-Cold War unilateral world order where U.S. hegemony remains unassailable. Therefore, for many, China's rise represents a threat to the stability of the established world order. So, under the current paper, research conducted in this paper is neither about China's rise nor the threat it poses. Rather, it is about the charm offensive of China's foreign policy. This charm of China is its soft power. And then that after so this paper is basically focused upon the China's foreign policy charm in South Asia. Then that in the following part, Elmie made a theoretical exploration. What is soft power? She mentioned several books. They are Bound to Lead, The Paradox of American Power, Soft Power, Power in Global Information Age, and The Future of Power. That all the five major works are of Joseph Nye. So that she made thorough studies of the soft power theory from nice, continuous works. Then to the next section, Elmie talks about a Chinese perspective on soft power. That the Chinese perspective on the soft power, that China takes over its traditional culture as a traditional philosophy as a base for its modern soft power. That one of the purposes for China to take over the soft power is to, for the purpose of fighting the China threat theory. China also put forth a theory of harmony, building harmonious society, and advocate harmony without suppression of differences. Then we can see in the next part, then Elmie talks about China's interest in South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. China has been interested in joining the SARC for many years. And now China is an observer of the SARC. Why China is interested in SARC? According to Elmie, that several main reasons. First, that China wants to fight against terrorism threatening China from the western China, out of west of China, that is from Pakistan, Afghanistan. The terrorism has caused great troubles in Xinjiang and Tibet. And so another problem is drug problem. Drug trafficking from Afghanistan into China has been increasing. And also, Elmie mentions that China has, given China's interest in South Asia, it's not very hard to imagine its presence in becoming an active member of SAARC. For a long time, China has continuously expressed her desire to be fully involved in SAARC, but to no avail. Historically, India has not been enthusiastic regarding Chinese participation in SAARC. However, of late, India has to agree to grant China observer status in the face of immense pressure from other South Asian countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. Playing the China card helps the smaller states to balancing the enormous influence that India has on the region and the SAARC. In the words of Jet Li, China is seen by many of India's smaller neighbors as an effective counterweight to India's preponderant power. Most of the SAARC members are eager for far deeper Chinese engagement in the region. The Chinese Foreign Ministry also sends some of their best diplomats to South Asia and to attend SAARC meetings. These diplomatic officials take advantage of platforms such as SAARC to pursue China's regional goals from 2010. These goals gradually can reduce Indian influence in the region. Now we turn to the next section, Chinese soft power initiatives in South Asia. In this section, the author tries to analyze the Chinese soft power initiative in South Asia and how this soft power diplomacy has made a strong impression in the region. It has often been argued by foreign policy observers that China's growing influence in South Asia and other parts of the world can be attributed to its use of soft power diplomacy, foreign assistance, trade and investment, and the perception of China as a vast potential market. Soft power diplomacy in China's most important foreign policy tool to acquire a worldwide network of friends and to aliens and allies to achieve the status of a global great power and gain access to global natural resources, raw materials, and overseas markets to sustain China's economic expansion. So that in this section, Elmie considers Chinese soft power include soft power foreign policy include Chinese cultural diplomacy. Cultural exchanges between China and the South Asian countries has been increasing in the past years. And then she talks about China's economic diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, economic diplomacy, and she finds that the trade volume between China and the South Asian countries have been on the increase. And therefore, her conclusion that we can argue that the successful Chinese economic and strategic ties with the South Asian nations have paved the way for Beijing's entry into the 13th SAARC Summit and eventually allowed it to receive observer status. Then the next level, that's the trade and investment. And China has become India's largest trade partner, and also another as China's development assistance and infrastructure growth programs, China's investment, China's help for South Asian countries to develop. She gave an example that when natural disasters hit the South Asian region, China demonstrated its support and concern. In the year 2007, when Bangladesh was hit by Cyclone Cedar, Beijing donated $1 million for relief and reconstruction. And China also offered aid, medical assistance, and urgent food supplies to Maldives and Sri Lanka after the tsunami catastrophe. So Chinese involvement in ongoing infrastructure projects in South Asia also has been gradually expanding. She gave many, many examples. The paper is very long, of 44 pages, including a very detailed bibliography. Okay, next section. India's perspective on China's growing influence in the region. I think that this part is very interesting. This part reflects her deep scholarship and her scientific attitude towards research in that subject. This section looks into how India has viewed the growing influence of China in SAARC and in South Asia, being the two most powerful contenders for Asian leadership. The frictions between India and China are more than evident. This is true not only at the level of Asian leadership, but the memory of old conflicts also strains relations between the two countries. Moreover, India doubts China's leadership with Pakistan and perceives it as a security threat. No doubt, therefore, any Chinese involvement in SAARC does not go down well with New Delhi. But I would like to read one more paragraph. That is, India and China are engaging in a competition for soft power supremacy in Asia. Malik states that Chinese soft power is state-driven and is a function of its economic success. On the other hand, Indian soft power is mostly cultural-driven. Its music and movie industry, art forms, literature, print, and electronic media. India has also seems to exercise a defensive soft power approach, and it is reluctant to transform its capacities into capabilities to improve its international stature. Unfortunately, the Indian foreign policy makers do not perceive their own political values as an attraction for others, unlike in the case of China. However, even when the soft power approaches of India and China are quite different, the more pertinent question remains: what has India done to resist the creeping Chinese influence in South Asia? And she answers this question in detail, and she also talks about another section, the challenges for China in the region. The challenges for China in the region mainly comes from India. She gives 4 points about this. And finally, time limitation. We can only, I'd like to read out her conclusion. Reviewing the arguments of this paper, we see that China's influence has grown enormously in the region. It is quite clear that as long as China's economy keeps growing, the growth of Chinese influence in the region is inevitable. That is a quotation from Frost, 2010. Chinese influence in the region is directly connected to the growth of the Chinese economy. The discussion also makes clear that China has vital national interests at stake in the region, and its preferred strategy is to use its soft power resources in attaining its national objectives. The use of SAARC for increasing the influence of China in the region fits well in the soft power framework of Chinese foreign policy. That's still too long. That then we just the final 2 sections. And finally, it's not very clear whether China just wants mutual cooperation in the region or is seeking a more dominant role for itself in the future. As China's capabilities rise, the latter interpretation might come true. However, at this stage, it is clear that China's larger goal is to develop a greater cooperation with all of its neighboring regions, which includes Asia Pacific, East Asia, Central Asia, and South Asia. That's why China has been playing an active and a positive role in promoting South Asian regional cooperation, as it wants to be recognized as an Asian leader. What is interesting is that the Chinese are pursuing these goals in a friendly manner, avoiding any kind of hegemonic and aggressive behavior. That is also one of the reasons why Chinese charm is growing fast in the region. And finally, the last paragraph. It would be apt to conclude that the nature of China's SAARC involvement is constructive and diplomatically skillful, from which India should also learn. As a matter of fact, India should also expand its soft power tools, show commitment at the highest level, try to avoid arrogant behavior, be responsive to South Asian concerns, and show more commitments to SAARC. That's the basic essence of Elmie's paper. Now, I'd like to say some my opinions upon the paper. First, I think Elmie has read vastly. She has collected a lot of materials from South Asia, India, and Chinese scholars' opinions, and Western theories, and Western the third party's judgment of China's relations with India, with SAARC. I think she has a very good foundation for a good a lot of materials for as a basis of for the success of her paper. And this paper also first from the she starts from a theory exploration, then to the China's charm foreign policy practice, China's soft power foreign policy in practice. Also, I think that her perspective, her views, and including the structure of the whole paper in her language, are just, I would say, excellent, very, very good. Although that there may be some flaws, some problems. One of the problems, I will not talk about some problems. One of the problems is that she does not know Chinese. Maybe it's a problem. If she knows Chinese, she would have read more materials, more papers in China. So far as I know, as Chinese scholars, including myself, have written papers concerning China's relations with SAARC and China-India relations, but most of them are in Chinese, so she could not make use of them. But I think that Elmie can really become a very excellent scholar on China-India relations. She can even become a very excellent diplomat herself. So I hope that in future I can meet her in Beijing, in her office in India Embassy. Okay? That is quite possible. But so far as I know that all Indian diplomats in China can speak excellent Chinese. Yeah? So that's my hope for Elmie. And well, another problem that is when Elmie talks about China's trade with South Asia, in fact, I think that she is very, very friendly towards China. For this, I would like to thank her for her friendship, for her to Chinese. After reading her paper, I immediately think that I can put her paper into Chinese and put it in my journal of South Asian studies. I will try to do this after her polished her paper again. So some small problem that because that she maybe does not know some details about some well-known Chinese. For example, in her paper, she mentions that Chinese novelist Gao Xingjian became the first Chinese Nobel Prize laureate in literature in 2000. I tell you, Elmie, frankly, that Gao Xingjian, of course, is an excellent writer, and he also is well known in China. But his works are banned in China. That means that most Chinese cannot read, cannot have the chance to get access to his works. And so if you go to China and read your paper, you'd better cancel these words about Gao Xingjian. Okay? Of course, it will not give you trouble, even if you talk about Gao Xingjian as the first Nobel Prize winner. It will give you no trouble today in China. Okay, that talking about the trade with South Asian countries, I think you are still a bit slightly optimistic. China's trade with South Asia, in my opinion, the volume is still small. Of course, China's trade with India is growing rapidly, has been growing rapidly. That is excellent. But China's trade with other smaller South Asian countries is not sufficient. That, for example, in Beijing, I met diplomats from Bangladesh, ministers and ambassadors. They were my friends. They complained frankly to me that we in Bangladesh are not satisfied with China's foreign trade with our country. You have imported only a little from Bangladesh. That is far below our expectation. And they asked me to pass their words to Chinese authorities. I tried to that. But still, I would say that the trade volume between China and Bangladesh is still very small. And China's trade with Bhutan is that the volume wavers, and the volume is it is negligible, just several $1 million a year, or not too much. That is about, you can still consider the volume, the trade between China and South Asia. It is increasing, but the bright spot is China-India trade. Still, you also talk about our trade. We have some problems between India and China, and for China's and for India's anti-dump lawsuits against China. Okay. So see here that you can put the China-South Asia trade in a bigger background to compare with China's trade with USA, with Japan, with Europe. Again, that's another small problem. When you talk about Chinese and other foreigners in your text, you'd better give their full names, okay? So that people can know who is who. I know all the Chinese you mentioned. They are all my friends. So by their only one name, I can give a name, I know who you mean. Yes, you have found the proper person. They are all Chinese experts on South Asia, on China-India relations. Shi Sheng, Hu Shi Sheng. And Gao Xingjian, Chinese name several, you have made a mistake. Gao Xingjian, not Gao Xingjiang. The final G, you should cancel it. Okay? Okay, then generally speaking, your paper is very, very objective, very, very, very academic. Okay? I have a very high opinion of your opinion. The last, I'd like to have a few words about the China-India relations. You, in your paper, talk about that. That China's policy towards India and Bangladesh and Pakistan. You talk about the trilateral relations. And in fact, China in the past, before 90s, China adopted a policy that to be pro-Pakistan, Pakistani. And from the 90s, since the end of Cold War, China began to try to keep a balanced relation with India and China. And that's my opinion. I think time is up. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Liu Jian, for your very encouraging comments and detailed feedback to Elmie. May I now invite Professor Mahendra Lama?
Well, thank you very much. Since Professor Liu Jian has discussed the papers in details, let me do it in a very concise manner. Elmie's paper I can place it in 5 different ways. First is it defines soft power, and primarily brings in Joseph Nye and his perspectives on soft power. Then Elmie does a little bit about assesses how what is the concept of Chinese soft power, and brings in a concept known as charm offensive. Right. Thirdly, she looks into the Chinese use of Chinese soft power in case of South Asia, particularly in the context of SAARC, and elucidates how China, what are the primary Chinese interests in an organization like SAARC. Then she also tries to do some kind of implications of such deployment of newer foreign policy instruments, because this is a kind of a new variety of foreign policy instrument in South Asia used by China. And finally, she tries to look into whether all these interventions, Chinese interventions in the SAARC, are happening in a competitive mode, or a conflictual mode, or a kind of cooperative mode. So these are the 5 basic layout of Elmie's paper. She brings in a context why China would like to play such a pivotal role in South Asia, and she brings in concepts like friendly and good neighborly relations in the foreign policy orientation of China in the last 2 decades or so. And she also brings in what China thinks about enriching, harmonizing, and reassuring the neighborhood. Then she does a very interesting, 5-point analysis of why China is interested in an organization like SAARC, thereby the South Asia. First, she says it is because China wants to check the instability, the internal instability in China right at its doorstep, that is by becoming very friendly with the neighboring countries, right? Secondly, she talks about the market access China gets in South Asia. Thirdly, she also discusses very briefly about how China can access raw materials from South Asia, and how China can also participate in the energy cooperation in South Asia. And she also brings in the last point as how China is trying to thwart what you call the geostrategic encirclement in South Asia. And these are the 5 primary factors that drive China's interest in South Asia. Then she brings in the 13th SAARC Summit, where China was given the status of an observer in South Asia, along with China or Japan, US, European Union, South Korea. And she rightly points out, because we have been very closely monitoring the entire SAARC process in South Asia, and she rightly points about how China makes some kind of a very emphatic and a unique statement in the SARC summit, because all the observers are invited to make a statement in the initial phase of the summit. Then they are not supposed to participate in the real proceedings, in the real process of the SARC summit, but they are allowed to make some kind of a statement. And if you see the statement made by EU representatives or Japanese or a Korean or US representative, and if you see Chinese statement in the SARC summit, you'll find a striking difference, because China only talks about practicality of it, the much more realistic an approach to SARC, right? Then she moves forward with what are the primary instruments China is using in the SARC process. She talks about the Chinese cultural diplomacy, and she brings in about how Confucius institutes in South Asia are doing, how China is promoting such kind of institutes. Except in India, China has been able to establish such kind of institute in almost all the parts of South Asia. So that gives a very, on the Chinese economic diplomacy, she makes very interesting remarks about how China has been able to make some kind of a substantive interventions in trade part of it. Say for example, though her data are slightly, outdated, I would have, since she has already referred to the DOT, the Direction of Trade Statistics of the International Monetary Fund, she could have gone up to 2010 at least. The 2010 figures are out. No, 2011 figures are out. But she stops at 2006. And even then, for example, she says that 1999, Bangladesh's trade with China was 715 million, and by 2006 it is 3.1 billion. Even a country like Sri Lanka, it was 268 million, and it goes to about 1.1 billion. So that shows that besides India, China has been able to make a major dent into what you call it, the entire economic cooperation process. The other thing which she also highlights, and which is of very critical importance about China's participation in the SARC process, is of course the infrastructural goals. It talks about Gwadar port and its linkages with Karakoram highway. She talks about Hamampota, port development by China in Sri Lanka. She talks about Chittagong Hill. She also talks about Chinese bringing railway lines up to Nepal, up to Nepal-Kathmandu border, linking it to what you call the Kathmandu-Kodari highway. And it's very interesting remarks she makes. Then she puts what are the challenges for China in South Asia, right? She does it, I know as a student, as just emerging scholar, I know her we can understand her limitations, but she puts it in a very emphatic manner. She says the challenges would be fourfold. One, of course, is the entire sustainability of the economic interventions China is making in South Asia. That's a very crucial statement. Some of us also feel that how long it will sustain, in what manners. Then she talks about how would China negotiate with the internal dynamics of South Asia. For example, you have terrorism, you have anti-China stands in different parts of South Asia. How will you negotiate with that? And she also mentions that about how China would negotiate with the third country interventions in South Asia, including US or European Union, such kind of things, right? And on the conclusion part, she says that China might eventually dominate the SARC process and use its influence to undercut India's interest, and she agrees with this view. And she also says that India has a lot to learn from how China has been doing in South Asia. Now, this is the presentation part of Elmie. Let me make my own comments on the paper. There are 3 or 4 very, strikingly lacking perspectives in Elmie's paper. First is Elmie takes Elmie thinks in the paper that I would get this impression that she really does not look into the entire issue of soft power the way it should have been looked into. Particularly when a soft power is used as a foreign policy instrument, right, by a sovereign country, then what are its intents, what are its contents, and what are its orientations? That should have been done. For example, if you ask me, I would have said that why Confucian Institute in the institutionalized form is used by China for the first time in South Asia, right? And why it is different from the soft power used by China in the in South Asia in the past. It's not that. So that means she totally ignores the history part of it. The soft power used by China in South Asia in the past, and how is it different from the soft power used today. For example, in a country like Nepal, soft power used by China in 60s and to a large extent in 70s was first using foreign economic assistance to Nepal, right, in terms of, say, doing Kathmandu-Kodari highway, or say Prithvi Rajmarg, or say ring road around Kathmandu, right? And in every project, Chinese technicians would do 2-3 things. First, they will have very few technicians with them. Rest, everything would be used from Nepal, raw materials to workers to anything, right? And secondly, whoever is working in the project aid side, they will have to put Mao's small lapel pin here, right? You get my point. And nobody would know. So many people would wonder about why Mao is so famous today in Nepal. And I would say, because I have worked on the foreign aid in Nepal, and I would find that Mao became famous in Nepal precisely because everybody in the entire village community, and that road crisscrosses from the Nepalese-Chinese Tibet border to the plain areas, right? And across you'll find Mao's lapel pin. So, that was a very, very, very sophisticated form of using what you call the soft power, right? And at how much it influenced the Nepalese thinking, you can see what has happened in the last 10 years, right? So this I think she has to go through the entire issue about how soft power has been used in the past. Then I would have thought that if she follows these two hypotheses, which I have tried to enumerate it here, it would be of tremendous value to this. It would really enhance the value. My first hypothesis in this paper, if she uses this, is more closer the China to South Asia, the higher the possibility of deeper cooperation and integration. This is one hypothesis, right? Because we are all expecting, yesterday also saying how to convert the present, how to transform the present, shallow regionalism in South Asia to a very active, resilient, and robust regionalism. And we think that Chinese effective participation and scientific interventions could really transform this process. And this is the core of this paper. The second hypothesis would be China's entry into South Asia could bring about unprecedented instability in South Asia, right? Now, this is precisely because I put this two hypotheses because it questions the three scenarios in South Asia today, right? These two hypotheses would question or would challenge the three scenarios in South Asia today. And they are well-established scenarios. First is, it questions the entire issue of bilateralism in South Asia, where India is the, India is the pivotal power, pivotal factor as far as bilateralism is concerned. Secondly, it also brings in the other powers that are present in South Asia into a much more active ground. And thirdly, it could give absolutely a new orientation to the entire question of soft power in South Asia. Therefore, I would like to conclude by saying that that it's a very good paper. The perspective of this paper is very, very innovative. The approach of this paper is quite new and refreshing. But the analysis part of this paper is not rigorous enough. Therefore, the conclusions of this paper, which have been arrived at towards the end, are very, very general in nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahendra, for bringing those additional insights. I think I'll now request both the authors to briefly, to maybe take 5 minutes each and respond to the comments they've received. Elmie, why don't you go first? Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Elmie, would you like to?
Yeah.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Elmie, yes, we can hear you.
First of all, I would like to thank the India-China Institute there for giving me this opportunity. And then secondly, I would like to thank both the discussants for the excellent reading and reviewing of my paper, and for the valuable comments on my paper. What I would like to add is, here is how complex relationship in South Asia that have been discussed in the paper is understood by both India and China, and I feel that this is crucial today. The two nations, India and China, I feel that they must find a way to co-evolve, and they should also cooperate as much as possible in the coming future, which is also valuable for the respective internal missions of each other. And I believe that what I think in my argument right now is that they should constantly adjust these bilateral relations to reduce the risk of a conflict in the coming future. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Elmie. I think we can do take a quick round. Okay. Thanks, Elmie. I think we can now go in for a quick round of questions. Should we take about 2 or 3 together, and then we'll give a chance to Elmie to respond. If you could kindly introduce yourself, because we are also recording, and for the benefit of the presenters.
You have to repeat your question, whatever you hear. Yeah. You have to repeat whatever you hear. Hello, Elmie. This is Mark Frazier. I'm India-China Institute acting the co-director starting in a few months. I was recalling a question that came up during one of our meetings yesterday when someone said that the Confucius Institute project had generally been assessed as a failure in India. And that was just mentioned in the context of a much larger conversation, so we didn't have time to ask whether that was the case, and if so, why. But I would like to hear your thoughts on, one, whether it is indeed and hasn't worked, and if so, why it hasn't worked, and then how would that inform the findings in your paper? Thanks.
You should come.
The next questioner will come up, and I guess we're going to collect some of these.
Yeah, 3 or 4 people.
Hi, this is Yang from China. Institute of Asia Pacific Studies. Nice to meet you here. I have a very simple question for you. Because you choose soft power as a perspective to examine China's presence in South Asia. for me as a Chinese, I'm very, very wondering, because for me, I think Indians' soft power in South Asia is still very predominant. So could you please simply tell me how you evaluate the difference between China's soft power and India's soft power in South Asia? Really, thank you.
Yes, why don't you please?
Sorry, because of the.
Good morning, Elmie. My name is Prem Shankar Jha, and I'm looking forward to reading your paper because the comments were so stimulating and it's obviously a very well worked up paper. I have a few quick questions to ask you. The first thing is that have you sort of, since writing this paper or looked since the data, have you looked at some of the more recent developments in, for example, the soft power relations between, well, let's say trade relations, forget about it, the soft power and hard power, we're not comfortable with that, between India and Pakistan, India and Bangladesh, and so on. How do they impact upon your overall assessment? But this is in connection with the issue that the soft power, the lady before me said, that India's soft power instruments are very, very strong. Are they being better used now? For instance, there's been this $1 billion account for Bangladesh that has been set up, which allows Bangladesh to run deficits with India up to $1 billion. It's taken care of by the Indian foreign exchange reserves. I think a similar arrangement will probably come through with Pakistan sometime. It will be a little bit more controversial. The other question is, even Nepal, have you looked at how Indian aid is used there? Because the quantities are huge. I saw the figure for 2010 that the Chinese aid was $21.4 million. The Indian aid targeted for Nepal was 3,200 crores, which is $650 million. Now that's the other thing is, of course, there are other forms of soft power which haven't come into your thing. For example, the remittances from Nepal to India to Nepal, which in the last assessment of the Reserve Bank of India was just very close to $1 billion a year. Now these are very big figures. And how do they fit into your scheme of your analysis? And whether you've been looking beyond the paper, that's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Greetings, Emily, and felicitations on such a nice paper. I was reading Joseph Nye's recent interview, and this was with regard to US policy vis-a-vis Iraq, where he made a couple of very interesting points. I thought I'll just raise them for your consideration. He said that when he talks about soft power, he's not talking about soft power in terms of as a substitute for hard power. He looks at soft power and hard power as two sides of the same coin. Because soft power, he says, could mean culture, where he uses a very interesting phrase from Harvard to Hollywood. He talks about political values, democracy, freedom of speech, and he talks about the legitimacy of a foreign policy action or foreign policy. Now, if you take the three together and apply this trinity, say, for example, to your assessment of China's soft power and India's soft power, you may get a very nuanced kind of a picture. Secondly, I thought that, in the recent document, which is Non-Alignment 2.0, I don't know whether you have seen that document. In that document, in which CPR has also played an important role, strategic communications is also being taken as an indicator of soft power. Now, once you factor that in, how, for example, China is in a position to communicate its cultural values or its other foreign policy messages. So I thought maybe as you finalize your paper, you would like to take some of these points into consideration. Thank you.
Elmie, would you like to take a couple of minutes to respond? I know these are a bag full of questions, but try your best to give a brief response at this stage.
Okay, now I go with the questions. The first question that was posed to me is why Confucius Institute is a failure, why it has been a failure in India. What I would like to say, yes, I do agree to that Confucius Institute has not been that much successful in India as compared to other parts of South Asia. And partly the reason lies in diplomacy, because India India is not so, Indian diplomats, I think, I don't know, I might be right to say that, but I feel that Indian diplomats are not that comfortable enough with the Chinese initiatives in India. So I think that's also one of the reasons why Confucius Institute has not been successful in India. But those institutes have been set up in south of India and also in some parts of India, like south of India, and then there has been initiative of establishing that institute in Delhi as well, in Jawaharlal Nehru University, but which is still on a whole process. Okay. Now the second question that has posed to me is Chinese presence in South Asia through soft power. And as you have, and why India's soft power more has, and you feel that India's soft power is more predominant in South Asia. And how do I evaluate that? Okay, to answer this question, what I would like to say is that India's soft power, no doubt, is also very successful, but India's soft power is more of a defensive policy compared to the Chinese one. India's soft power in South Asia has been in matters of music, Bollywood, or in the late, before it was Mahatma Gandhi's ideals and his values. That is also a soft power in which is followed by many in South Asia. And also we can talk of democracy as a very effective tool of soft power of India. But this has not been that much successful in South Asia because Chinese, the way they are using the soft power in South Asia has been very different, because they have been using a very active role compared to India. Like they have been giving lots of aid and more in helping the South Asian in building dams. Example, this is just an example that I'm citing. But in the recent past, yes, India is also taking that role, but the Chinese have done it much better in the past. Now the third question, I've been asked if I have looked at the recent data. Then let me be very honest. I have, and also the discussants have also pointed out by reading my paper that there have not been any recent analysis or recent data mentioned in my paper, and I would completely agree to that. And I also apologize, I have not got much time to look at the recent data, but thank you so much for that question, and I will try my best to look into that. And the final question by Professor Chaturvedi on me has been your suggestions on soft power and hard power of your analysis of Nye has been, yeah, I completely agree to that. that Nye completely say, and Nye says that soft power and hard power, they are both complementary to each other. And maybe I have failed to differentiate that much in my paper, I guess, yeah. And but what I would yeah, and also you have pointed out that the non-alignment to the that strategic, the signaling of the strategic has been a new phenomena of soft power, and I would completely agree to that, because when according to Nye, his definition of soft power, he had a very different view. But when it comes to South Asia or in Asia, like Chinese, when Chinese adopted soft power, it gave a very different, a nuanced understanding of soft power, I would say. Like the Chinese included many different points and values which were not considered in the Western purview. So it's same way, like in this strategic line, I would say that yes, this is also a soft power tool, which is so it's a changing role of soft power which has been taking place in the recent years. Thank you.
Thanks, Elmie. I think we'll go straight to the second paper. You want to ask a question, Tanzir? Yeah, please. I thought we were just getting out.
Hi, Elmie. I was at the Delhi conference where you presented this paper. I think it has improved from the previous one. But I had two issues. And before that, the Confucius Institute was brought up, but the Chinese are using Buddhism in case of Nepal and Islam in case of Pakistan and Bangladesh as soft power as well. So I think that needs to be also put into the context. And Chenghe in Sri Lanka. So I think there are various ways the Chinese are using non-Confucian cultural aspects in South Asia that perhaps you can look into. But my two questions, one is how do the other South Asian countries, Bangladesh, Nepal, think about China vis-a-vis India and how they let the soft power from China being used in their territories? Have you looked at Bangladesh looking at China vis-a-vis India or Nepal in such cases? And my second question is, when you are talking about soft power in SAARC, have you looked at or examined how China uses soft power in ASEAN countries? So one is SAARC that you have looked at. Is it different or similar to what China does with ASEAN countries?
Thank you.
Elmie, just 1 minute. Could you just take like literally 30 seconds to respond? We are really running out of time. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this question. Yeah, Buddhism. I think I have not mentioned Buddhism in the case of South Asia, and I think this is a very important point, and thank you for that. I will take into consideration. And regarding soft power, how the Chinese have used soft power in ASEAN, that has been very successful as compared to South Asia. The Chinese use of soft power in ASEAN and South Asia has been very similar, but it has been active in ASEAN and less in South Asia. But in my paper, I focus only on South Asia. That's why ASEAN I have not reviewed. Thank you.